Stage movement is important in presentation. Barring a few exceptional circumstances, any speaker that is locked behind their podium or stuck in one position on the stage is more than likely to come across as boring or nervous. Anything between us and our audience is a barrier to presentation, so we need to be able to move freely across the stage in order to connect better with our audience. The system that we use to do this is called the speaker's rows, which defines 3 types of steps that you can take on the stage in order to connect better with your end audience. Those steps being 1. Pacing, 2. Stepping forward, and 3. Stepping backward. Each of these movements creates a landmark in the mind of your audience, a point of reference that, when they look back on your presentation in the future, will allow them to better take in and understand your ideas and remember those ideas more clearly. So let's go through each of these in turn. Pacing is a neutral maneuver. It creates that landmark in the mind of your audience through movement while not changing how they perceive your point. It essentially creates that flag without deepening or broadening the perspective on that flag. So as you begin to pace, there are a few things to keep in mind. 1, pacing is a commitment. It's not enough to take a half step to one side and half step to the other. This sort of undirected motion will only end up distracting your audience. So when you start pacing, be aware that you'll have to continue pacing until the next point that you want to raise another landmark in the mind of your audience, the next point of significance. The second is that you must maintain eye contact with your audience even as you're pacing. One of the key mistakes that many speakers make is that the moment they start pacing, they start looking at their own shoes or looking at the opposite wall. But eye contact is critical to presentation, so you need to maintain that eye contact even as you start pacing. The next type of step is stepping forward. Here, you're getting closer to your audience, and whenever we get closer, no matter what idea we're expressing, that idea takes on a greater degree of intensity. So essentially, you're increasing the strength of your idea as you get closer and closer to your audience. Generally speaking, you'll see a speaker do this at a critical point or the call to action during their presentation, any idea that they want to impress more deeply into the minds of their audience. Lastly, we have the step backward. The step backward is like a breath of fresh air. It's a moment of relief for your audience that allows them to broaden the scope of their perspective on your idea and take in the words that you've said in the full context of your entire presentation. That moment of relief is generally used at transitional points during the presentation. So moving from one point to another, closing off the presentation, or as a follow-up to a step forward to impress a certain point upon their perspective.